So, call the meeting back to order. Yes. So our first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of November 18th, 2014. Are there any edits or revisions? Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. No opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have public comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda. You have 3 minutes. You can form a line.
I don't get my hands behind a microphone very often, so please bear with me. My name is Sue Ungewitter, and I am the operator-owner of Sue's Circuit on the very south end of Sebastopol. There, I've got my plug-in and my hat. Now on to business. Tonight I wear another hat as the Vice President of Sebastopol Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Center Board. The board would like to extend an invitation to the public to attend the town tree lighting held on December 4th. That's just this coming Thursday, 5 to 8. New to the event this year, we are requesting from the public to bring a non-perishable food item to help our local food banks. The board, of course, hopes that all the council and city employees will attend this great event. We so appreciate the hard work the Public Works Department in the decorating for the plaza and the fire department with a very, very important job of transporting Santa Claus. The board has also sent a special letter to the city clerk inviting the newly elected mayor, Patrick Slater, to assist Keller McDonald, our this year's Citizen of the Year, with the tree lighting ceremony. That's it for tonight, folks. Have a happy holiday.
Thanks.
My name is Tasha Beauchamp, and I am the co-chair of Chitaslo Sebastopol. I'm going to pass out our results from the Pedline survey that I wanted to take this 3 minutes to give you a quick rundown on. So the Pedline, as you may recall, was the Park Once and Walk campaign that evolved from the ecotourism open house, where citizens voiced their concerns about if Sebastopol were to become more of an ecotourist destination, what would they like to have us work on? And top on the list was, how can we possibly invite more people with their cars, with it being as congested as it is already. So a task force at the beginning of about 27 people, with groups all over the place represented: the CORE Project, the I Walk Sebastopol folks, a for-profit business, Studio Homage, they do wayfinding signs, Complete Streets Committee, got together and talked about having these 3 self-guided tours with the idea of inviting people, especially visitors, but residents as well, to help the planet, park the car and take the Pedline. So you'll see the maps here. There were 4 routes: the red route to Florence Avenue Art Walk, the green route to the Laguna, and the blue route to Ives Park. And last May, the council let us go forward with a pilot project of trying this out for 6 weeks. So we put up signs, professionally designed signs, poles, and then there were times when there weren't poles in a convenient place where you had to tell somebody to make a left or make a right. So we also had some stenciling on the sidewalk. And we invited the public to answer a survey about it, and we had both a mobile survey as well as paper versions of the survey. And overall, we got 88 survey respondents giving us feedback on 99 walks. So some people went on more than 1 walk. I want to point to the specific highlights here, because this is where I say we knocked it out of the park. Because our goals were to reduce unnecessary traffic car traffic and improved pedestrian trips. 64% of visitors said it was moderately to extremely likely that because of the pedline, they walked when they otherwise would have driven. We wanted to improve exposure to merchants. 72% said it was moderately to extremely likely that they visited a store, restaurant, or other venue they would not have visited were it not for the pedline. And then in terms of purchases, 52% of participants said that they actually did make a purchase, $30 each average for residents and $41 each for visitors. We haven't had data like that before, so this is really very helpful. And then knitting the social fabric, this is the statistic that makes my heart really go pitty-pat, which is 82% of people said that they had a conversation with someone they would not have had it not been for the fact that they were walking. Thank you very much.
Ila Benavides Heister, 7777 Bodega Avenue. I'm going to change the tone a little bit here. I want to thank you for your decision last November 18th on the proposed trails. I believe by that decision it's going to deepen and we're going to have a better end product. What I am most concerned with is the process ahead of time. That is consistent when we get bogged down, and it's happened before, and I hope that we can begin to make inroads, and I've been paying attention to that a lot. The second thing I want to talk to is the word coerced. When that word was mentioned in this room, I thought, why does that not feel right? You know, when you get that moment of, oh, wait a minute. So I went home and I talked to a number of people. I read all the literature in the paperwork that Mary Gorley supplied for us. And I went, that term is unfounded. And what I discovered in that process, I didn't talk to a lot of people, but enough to say, am I not reading something? I was away during that time, so I didn't know. But I think, I'm not asking for us to be impeccable with our language, because I think that's a tough thing to do. But I am asking us to be thoughtful. When we do a word like coerce in a group, then that carries that home. The thing that I noticed was the sexist language and the ageist language that was used when they say whipping by on their bicycles. They're worried about toppling over. Do you realize what you've just said? And I think people don't understand when they're using ageist language. I would like us to stop, or at least become aware of what we are doing. What I can say to you is we did discover, I did discover, I'm not going to do a we, because I cannot speak for all the people at BHO, Birkbeck Housing. I can say that we are such a diverse group, we will never agree. We will never agree. And I think that is great. I think that is great. We do not have to agree on we're all going to oppose the park trail. But there were enough people when I talked to them, the very shy ones who don't want to talk to anybody. And they said, I was uncomfortable. But what I was uncomfortable with is I didn't want to get involved. And now that I've done it, I'm glad I did. So no one was coerced.
Good evening, Lou Tavares, and I hope that all had a happy and thankful Thanksgiving. We did at our house, and one of the things we were celebrating is that we have learned about primary water and why we don't have a water shortage. And I'm going to read from this note here, of which the council members have each received one, and there are at the table by the door, there are copies of this for anyone of the people here who would like to get one and take home with you. But I'm going to read from it, and it says, don't let the negative media campaign frighten you about the scarcity of water. The earth is the water planet and continuously produces water from within. In fact, it is renewable. We have an abundance of water. Why would the corporate government agencies create the false science of water scarcity and the fear we're running out of water. The goal is control, money, and creating compliance to water monitoring, required reduced water use, and charging higher usage costs, all based on our ignorance of where water really comes from. Now, primary water is an abundance, and we must start looking down for water instead of up. To learn the facts about this primary water, go to stopthecrime.net. There's a link to the primary water, and there's also a link to the Primary Water Institute. And this evidence will provide you with the knowledge to combat the corporate media fear campaign and spread the truth to everyone and demand that our cities use primary water to recharge groundwater basins that have been overpumped. Now, I'd like to say one thing about Sebastopol, the city and the water supply, is one of the last things I heard Michael Kai say from the table right up here is Sebastopol's wells are in good shape. There's a chance that Sebastopol is blessed with having some of its water source come from this primary water. Now, it is everywhere. It just, you need to have the right geological technologies to know how to acquire it, where to drill, and how deep to drill. But if you go to YouTube and watch Water Crisis Hoax, there's a lot of good information there. And take the time to read this. You're going to be hearing a lot more about primary water in the future. And it's going to solve our problems. Accessing this water can recharge our groundwater supplies and provide us with endless supplies of water, and we'll get away from this hoax of scarcity, control, and crazy prices. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. He used to work for the LA Department of Water and Power. So I do want to add to the conversation about this great news. If you'll see on the back of the flyer, and everyone is welcome to take one, we have them on the back by the agendas, you'll see an illustration, and you'll see that it discusses primary and secondary water cycles. What we have been taught is only the secondary water cycle, the snowmelt and the rain. But all water comes from the primary cycle. It comes up from the ground. That's why after the Napa earthquakes, some of the parched, dried streams and creeks started to run. And we were at the water department meeting just a few weeks ago when they had the Napa earthquake water people there. And those streams are still running. In fact, one of the city wells has now turned into an artesian well. Now, you can get to primary water anywhere. It just depends on whether you drill straight down or you drill diagonally into a fractured fault. In fact, if we were to release more of the primary water, that is bound to come up, because when hydrogen and oxygen merge, of which hydrogen means water making. Hydrogen is the fact of the greatest amount of mineral that we have on the planet. And again, it's going to come up when it turns into water. And we would actually relieve the stress and reduce the possibility of even earthquakes. Maybe instead of a 6, we could have a 3, by simply relieving some of the pressure of the upward flow of this water. They've accessed water in deserts. In fact, Omar Gaddafi, while drilling for oil, found water. It was the great man-made river project, it was the 8th wonder of the world, and NATO bombed it. But I can say that this water is everywhere, and we do not have a scarce water supply. We have an overpumped groundwater basin system that we can easily recharge by accessing primary water. So this is the great news. We'll be talking about it as we come forward to other meetings, because we are meeting with Hungarian water experts, primary water experts. We want to share this great news with everybody so that we're not fearful. And then the next thing I wanted to bring up, I passed these around to everyone as well. This is a letter from the Richmond City Council. and it was directed to representatives that presented the information about the abuses related to electronic harassment and organized gang intimidation and terrorism. This is a global problem that has surfaced only a few years ago. People have been hit with and targeted for decades, but I would urge you to take a look at this and consider adding that into the one time a month when you acknowledge gang-related items. Thank you.
Good evening, my name's Magic. Patrick, you're always commended for your practicality and logic, and I just wanted to honor you for using the word dreams and invoking that we express our dreams and how they could be manifested. I do want to talk, echo my sister about process. The last meeting, a lot can be learned from. I truly believe that there's not a single person that was objecting around concerns from the senior center or Eleanor Street. If any of those young children sitting, looking up in expectancy had come to them as an elder and said, I want a safe place to ride my bike, not one of them would have spoken the way they were speaking. But the way things had been presented, they were fearful and they were reactive and their vision was narrow and they weren't realizing that all these young people, we had more generations here, all connected, and it became adversarial and fearful and confrontational. And I want to say that it's a responsibility of all of us in the room, and especially the people facilitating, not just the mayor. Any council member can say, I think there's a misunderstanding here. I think that we need to understand that we are not approving this tonight, that this is an exploration. I think the way it got on the agenda needed to be looked at again. I don't think it was presented in a way that allowed for a dialogue and input that would have made us all feel like we were a community trying to find safety for our elders, the best options, and for our children to be safe. The other thing that I wanted to mention briefly is the idea of a dream. And my dream personally is that we give up ownership of the earth and that the jurisprudence system becomes one of earth jurisprudence. And that only through that, in our jurisprudence, nothing but humans are protected. Everything else is owned, therefore an object, and therefore has no rights. And right now, I heard on NPR today, there are 100 porpoises left, this one kind of porpoise, because of overfishing. Basically, what our laws do now is codify the exploitation of all other species and life on our planet. Mendocino County has now passed a community bill of rights that includes the rights of nature. Many communities across the United States are doing this. No one wants to cover it in the media because it's actually going to overturn our system of thought, which is completely human-centered. And we can't, here we are, I mean, there's an old quote about Lovelock, who was one of the original philosophers that came to say, if we thought like that, his mind would mine his liver. That's kind of what we're doing. We're mining that which gives us life. We're exploiting it, we're hurting it, we're torturing it. And I want to love it, and I want us to be a community that finds a way to codify the rights of nature. And this is practical and can be done. Thank you, that's my dream.
Good evening, my name is Meg Mizutani. I am a board member of Sebastopol World Friends. Today I'm making this announcement on behalf of the Chihirin Committee, which is our Ukrainian sister city committee. Sebastopol World Friends is pleased to invite the public to an evening of presentations on Ukrainian culture and politics on Wednesday, December 10th. At Edworthian Hall at the Methodist Church in downtown Sebastopol at 7 o'clock. These free presentations will be given by the Ukrainian members of our upcoming U.S. Open World delegation. Sebastopol once again has the honor of being the host city to this prestigious congressional program, and we are excited to announce the arrival of 5 delegates from our Ukrainian sister city Chihirin this coming Friday. They will be in Sebastopol for 2 weeks, learning a great deal about American culture, politics, and social organizations. and will be pleased to share their knowledge and expertise on Ukraine with us at this public event on Wednesday, December the 10th. Leaflets are available, this blue paper at the table out there for more details. Thank you so much.
No more public comments, so we'll close, and now moving forward. Yes.
While there's this many people here, I just want to have one thing I wanted to mention, if I may.
Sure. As long as you can do it in 3 minutes or less.
Sorry, we normally make our announcement at the end, but I don't know if this many smiling faces will be here at the end. So it's, this Thursday, Dining Out for Life, and for face-to-face, it's their biggest fundraiser of the year. So after the after the tree lighting ceremony, it's amazing. Sebastopol is the most highly represented city of restaurants that participate. It really speaks volumes of our city. So anyway, encourage you to go out to eat, have a great meal, and donate to a great cause, and help support the hundreds of clients, HIV/AIDS clients in Sonoma County that face-to-face supports. Thank you. And I don't have that list, but you can go to face-to-face or to Dining Out for Life.
Thank you.
Yes, certainly that's well worth mentioning. Every year, it's amazing what they do. Are there any statements of conflict of interest by any council members on any items on tonight's agenda? No? The next item is the consent calendar, part 2, which is the approval of award of contract Laguna de Santa Rosa Wetlands Preserve Management Plan. Are there any council members who wish to take this off consent?
I would be.
All right. And as that's the only item on consent, we will move forward with that. Do you have a quick question, or will this be a more lengthy discussion?
We're receiving a presentation, is that not correct?
No.
No, we're not. Okay, my mistake.
Actually, I do have like 3 or 4 quick questions, I hope.
Would a staff report be of value?
Yeah.
Quickly, please.
This report is recommending that the city manager be authorized to enter into a contract for preparation of the Laguna Preserve Management Plan, and further to transfer funding from a previously established reserve account that was created for this project into an expenditure account. In the early 1990s, the city created a master plan for a Laguna park. The park didn't exist. And this followed actually years of citizen and volunteer efforts to protect the Laguna and recognize its value. In 1998, the city began construction of the first phase of the Laguna Preserve, and then things got rolling. A number of different grants were obtained, some major donations were made, and the Laguna Preserve that we have today came to be. But what we call the preserve consists of a number of kind of disconnected properties. We have the area behind here, behind the youth annex and the ball fields. There's the 60-acre Meadowlark Field across the Laguna Channel. There's Tomodachi Park, our newest city park, next to the Village Mobile Home Park. The Railroad Forest, which was one of the first Laguna properties that I think it was the first that the Open Space District assisted the city in purchasing. And so there's these different properties with different characteristics that aren't really recognized, I think, by the public especially, as all part of a common Laguna Preserve. And then also there's issues about improvements, those connections I mentioned. Do we need a footbridge in this location? Do people understand where the pathways are? Are there connections we can make to surrounding properties, to the county trail system? How can we coordinate better with those? There's also physical issues, ecological issues with invasive species. How do we manage those? How do we maintain the trails? What is the role of volunteers? What areas need further restoration? And so we built this preserve, and Public Works has been taking care of it. But what are the appropriate maintenance protocols going into the future? What resources might the Public Works Department need to maintain and improve the preserve appropriately? And what improvements should be made? So those are kind of, in general terms, the purpose of this Laguna Preserve Management Plan is to examine existing conditions, see what the issues are, see what the needs are, hopefully develop a practical plan for how Public Works should maintain the preserve, and identify these opportunities for improvements, be they ecological, access, signs that tell people this is a park and it has value and there's interesting things in it. So that's what it's all about. Part of the proposed scope of work includes public workshops with the Planning Commission kind of taking the lead as a forum to receive public input and provide direction to the project, but ultimately City Council would need to review and approve the plan. So that's basically what the plan is all about. And we have representatives of the consultants tonight if you have questions for them.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Eater, I understand you have some questions.
Well, the first question I have is, I think that this plan needs to resolve finally once and for all what the role of pesticides is in the Laguna. I know this council approved funding for application of Roundup in the railroad forest, but I also understand that it's the position of the city that we don't apply pesticides. So there's a bit of a conflict there in my level of knowledge. So I would hope that the plan resolves that.
Yeah, that is a key issue in terms of managing invasive species and how should that be accomplished. So I think that will be definitely an issue that will be looked at, perhaps resolved in this plan. How how does the city deal with those issues?
Yeah, so we don't have that kind of internal friction on how we deal with that. Another thing is, obviously, I would think they would take into account the new countywide creek setbacks. That will affect this plan as well, I would think.
Yeah, part of the consultant's work will be kind of assessing all the regulatory setting, what different agencies regulate the Laguna and what goes on in the Laguna Preserve and what goes on with it, and we want to consult with those different agencies as well, get their input, whatever concerns they might have. So that would include the County of Sonoma and any relevant regulations that they have as far as the creek setbacks.
That kind of follows into my next question, which is, based on recent past experience, I would hope that the council would support part of this document being a guide that lists all appropriate agencies that need to have approval, that we need to receive approvals from for any kind of project that the city wants to do, be it with city employees, be it with volunteer groups, so that we don't find ourselves possibly operating in a murky environment of, did we actually check in with all the right folks and get, because, one of the things that came up for me in numbers of meetings I had was verbal approvals are fine, but they don't hold water. Yet the agencies giving those gave the impression that a verbal okay was adequate. So I think we need to really have a clear understanding of who the players are anytime we go out into the Laguna, just to protect the city's position if anything else. In the cost estimate for this, they talked about public meeting will be limited to one meeting early in the process and presentations at one planning commission and one city council meeting, so 3 meetings total. And I'm wondering if we can't combine the planning and city council meetings. I would just put this before the council for consideration. It seems redundant to do those 2 meetings independent of one another, and possibly use the funds that are saved by doing that to allow for an additional public meeting, let's say a midpoint, kind of a check-in meeting, like where are we at so far and what direction are we headed. You know, I'm fearful a document that's of this magnitude and this many stakeholders, and certainly of this much importance to our community, would be allowed to get all the way to the end, and then everybody looks at it possibly and says, this isn't at all what we had in mind, or it's off base, or whatever. And so I'm thinking maybe we could have a joint planning city council meeting presentation, and then have an additional public meeting, kind of just to give everybody a sense of the direction that's being taken, and let everybody, you know, have a better idea.
Yeah, one
that's
update to the meeting issue in the, because we inquired of the consultant about the number of meetings, and they actually offered to have 3 additional public meetings beyond what was in the original proposal.
Okay.
So they are contemplating more public meetings, and I think the idea, we can definitely look at the idea of a joint council planning commission workshop in laying out this project. That may be a good idea.
And actually, I'm mistaken, I have one other question. I didn't see in here where there was a identification of a public comment period prior to final adoption at the end.
We would have such a period. Once a draft is created, that would go through a review process with the commission and the city council, and there would be time in advance of the start of that process for public comment. So we will structure something like that into the process.
Great, thank you. That answers all my questions.
Are there any other questions from council? Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Please come forward.
I have a question that I was hoping maybe I could get an answer. Is the property tax base changed when property goes into open space versus park status? Are we still receiving property taxes? One question. Could there just be a nod since you can't verbally talk?
The question is noted, and we'll see if we can't find the answer.
Okay, I appreciate that. Then my next question is about the public comment period. It seems as though the number of meetings that we've attended when they've been led by facilitators, is this an in-house consultation team, or are we bringing in someone from Sacramento? Because it seems as though when we have outsourced the public comment period, we're getting sort of a plethora of outsourced public comments in the reports, and not necessarily what I've heard discussed at the public outreach meetings here in Sebastopol. Because when I've looked in the past at the easels and the post-it notes, and I've looked at what the people are commenting about, I'm not really seeing some of those things ending up in the report. And I think, is it an arbitrarily discarded if the person that's writing the report doesn't want to enter those things into the report? It's a little bit of a misunderstanding, perhaps. I'm not sure, but it seems as though the efforts that we put forth to go out and have some comments don't seem to end up in the reports, like the EMF from the past and other things. They're sort of like, oh gosh, at the end of the entire project, it's a little add-on and it doesn't end up initially. So I'm just hoping that it's a real public comment and it's not a consensus kind of a Delphi type
of a meeting. That's my concern. Thank you. Thank you, John, for bringing up those questions and taking it off the consent calendar. This is a perfect example of what I was talking about before. Invasive species is just like saying a racist term. It's like illegal alien. There are no invasive species except, in fact, humans. We are the ones that have been creating the problems and even bringing species from all over the world. And we can't change that, so we need to look how to create a balance. There is actually no good reason to ever use insecticides, herbicides. It's the same thing as genocide. It's just a different species that we somehow don't seem to acknowledge as having the right to life that we do. So I have worked on this project for many years in this community, and I would request an opportunity to give a presentation of about 15 minutes to give the history that happened around the Pepperweed Project, around the Ludwigia, and both of those projects, the Pepperweed Project started out with the entire cooperation, without the use of pesticides, of every city council member working out in the Laguna with hundreds of volunteers, and political pressures were put on our mayor and our council members that the 3 green members of that council, which we were noted for across the United States and the world, all turned, including the person that created the toxics ordinance, against and voted to have pesticides. And it broke my heart to see that project, which hundreds of people worked on. Tons of pesticides were put in for Ludwigia, tons. I'm not exaggerating. $1.2 million that went up over $2 million in the end. And also, is this project subject to CEQA? And we need to look at that. This is exactly what we have to change in our relationship to nature. We can find ways to understand why different species are coming in. But I've taken a look out, and the pepperweed seems to be at the same place it was, and I don't think it would have changed. I mean, pepperweed also has good functions, which I can tell, and don't have time tonight. But I have done tons of research on this, and I am not happy to think that we are going to, every time invasive species is said, the pesticide industry drools, and they set up a war room, and that's what they call it. Thank you.
Hi, this is Tasha again from the Sebastopol. I just wanted to point out on the second page here that we have data from people who did these walks in the Laguna Walk. It was right there. We have feedback from people saying what it is that these are both locals and visitors, that they look at the Laguna and say, what? I mean, it was clearly the one that had the most feedback of, this was really disappointing. And this, we came here, like most people, when you look at what people were interested in, back where it says areas of interest, 33% of residents and 32% of visitors were interested in nature in Sebastopol. And then they went on the Laguna walk and they just kind of, this is disappointing. Forestry is totally ugly. And here's the Laguna right here beside us, and nothing's being done to celebrate it. We can't really tell where the entrances are. So I just did a light brush, but we've got the data. I'm happy to give you the survey results, because it's a really easy column where you can look and just say, oh, these are people who actually went and did this walk, and can give you fresh eyes look of what people are expecting. And you can even sort it by residents and visitors. So I gladly offer that data.
See no other members of the public, we'll close public comment. There were 3 questions from the public. The first, is the property tax base changed?
This is public property, so the city doesn't pay property tax. The properties we're talking about are all owned by the city of Sebastopol.
Okay, thank you.
Does
There-
not generate property tax.
It doesn't, and it will not. No change. Is this an in-house consultation team? We don't know yet. We have not approved the contract, and that is what this item actually is. And the recommendation from staff is a local company.
Yeah.
Sebastopol local.
Yeah, the recommended firm, Prunensky Chatham, is about as local as you can get. Their office is about a block and a half from where we're sitting right now. So, and they're very familiar with the community and the Laguna, and I'm sure that they'll pay attention to public
And then the final question that I have was, is the project subject to CEQA?
Potentially, we will be looking at that. This is, primarily a study and a guide for what is already existing out there, so it's not going to be a design for construction. It may identify that we need, or there's an opportunity to do a restoration project in one area, or maybe to put in a simple trail in another area, but it's not intended to be an actual construction plan. It's more about managing what we already have. So, but we will need to make a secret determination once we get further in the process.
Thank you. All right, is there any discussion on the part of council? I would entertain a motion.
So moved. The motion would be that the contract be awarded to Ernest Chavin in the amount of $89,200 for the completion of a study for a Laguna Preserve Management Plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Motion carries. Do we need a second motion? Do we need that second motion?
Yeah, if it wasn't specific in the first motion, I think that would be advisable.
So then I will just move to approve the resolution transferring the project funding from the Parks Reserve to budgeted expenditure account for us to do the work of the previous motion.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and action items. First is something that was rescheduled from the city council meeting of November 18th, which ran long, and that is the discussion and consideration of appointment of a council subcommittee regarding climate action 2020 planning. Staff report, please.
The city is part of a effort with all of the jurisdictions in Sonoma County, the county and the cities, with the exception of the city of Santa Rosa, that already has a climate action plan, to collaborate on a preparation of a multi-jurisdictional climate action plan, and set of plans, really. And so it will be moving in, this project they've been collecting a lot of data over the last year or so, and getting input from various groups. They had workshops here in Sebastopol and other communities. And it will be moving into a policy development phase in the coming year. And we think it's a fairly technical area, and that it would be very beneficial if we had a subcommittee of 1 or 2 council members that could dig into this issue, get some briefings from the consultants and staff, our CPA staff that are involved with preparation of it, so that we all can get a better handle on it as this moves into a public process. So our recommendation is that if there are members willing to serve, that 1 or 2 people be designated as a subcommittee to help with this project.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Councilmember Eby.
Do you have a sense of how often the meetings will be held and kind of what the time commitment is?
Well, I think 1 or 2 initial kind of briefing meetings to provide the members with background on the project and what it's trying to do, and some of the technical policy questions that will be coming our way. So 1 or 2 meetings like that, maybe an hour and a half apiece, and then probably as it moves into, especially when we get into closer to consideration and public hearings here at the city of Sebastopol, probably a couple more meetings. So not a huge time commitment, we're not anticipating.
Thank you.
And I should have added that under the way this plan is being prepared, each community can make its own policy decisions about what is in its climate action plan. This is not going to be a uniform plan where every jurisdiction gets the same plan. Each city and the county will pick from a menu of possible policies and programs and decide if they're comfortable with those or if they feel they can financially support those. So each jurisdiction, including Sebastopol, gets to make its own choices on this project.
No other questions of staff? Any members of the public wish to speak on this item?
Yes, thank you very much. I looked at the contract that was signed between the county and all the jurisdictions, and Santa Rosa's climate action plan was referenced in there to represent the template for all of the other jurisdictions. So while I appreciate the idea that we can create our own kickoff from that, you'd have to amend that already signed agreement because it is noted that it is to be a template, Santa Rosa's plan. And ICF, which is the international corporation that has put this plan forward in the county, is a distant facilitator putting it together. The plan requires smart meters on every home. It requires required retrofitting of all non-RFID chipped Energy Star appliances. Many people have expressed sensitivity to the pulse microwave frequencies. That is a requirement in the plan. The plan also, the Santa Rosa plan says that no one is to use gas appliances or equipment any longer. Well, when you look at the Energy Star appliances for appliances, they don't make gas appliances, so you've got to kind of scratch your head and wonder what that's all about. So our kind of cute phrase is we can kiss our gas goodbye. But I can say that the plan that we've really spent a lot of time on, that Santa Rosa's already adopted, is well over an inch thick, and I can't imagine that it could be a casual review by people that would be signing on to look through it. It is, in my opinion, quite daunting. The opportunity to hire more code enforcement is going to have to be considered as a requirement to implement this plan. As you know, you're assisting the funding of the added personnel at the Santa Rosa Police Department to be the environmental code enforcement. I don't know if you're aware of that, but Santa Rosa has an environmental police task force to implement these plans. The county recently added on another position of code enforcement. These plans are about increased revenue, and the revenue being based upon the requirements of these plans, and they're very odious, at least. And it identifies properties outside of the city growth boundary as being considered sprawl and unsustainable, and they're not able to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions adequately. And it's very, it's rather horrific when you look at the already approved plan that Santa Rosa has. So I would really hope that you would read that plan closely and take a look at how you would move forward. I know that the city of Fairfax looked at it. They had voted against smart meters as well. And I'll bring the plan next time and go over a few items with you. Thank you.
Any other members of the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, public comment will close. Is there any discussion on the part of council? question for Vice Mayor Gurney. Is this something with the RCPA that you are familiar with?
Yes, the overall plan. This subcommittee is intended to be our own group, working for our own policies to establish our own plan, as that would relate to a regional plan, which is what the RCPA is looking at, the big picture, and ours is a part of that. I agree with Ms. Traveris. This is really substantive. It's very significant, and I think quite important for our future. So I was hoping amongst us, 2 of you would volunteer to take this on for our community. And I can look at some of you down there and know you have interest and experience in energy conservation and building and water, etc. So I'm just checking if you'd like to volunteer, anybody.
Councilmember Glass?
Well, actually, I would like to volunteer. And as you know, my husband and I had a software company that designed energy analysis software at one point, so I feel that I have something to contribute in this arena. I also live in a zero energy home where we actually got a national award for our home. So I know a lot about energy and its relationship to our need to plan for climate change. So I think I have something that I could contribute to this committee.
All right, 1 down, 1 to go.
Well, I'm unclear if this is a primary and alternate configuration, or if it's 2 primaries,
I
or...
believe it's 2 primaries, 2 equals.
Okay. I know how to change a light bulb.
Okay, you're on.
Minimum qualifications. Yeah, actually, I had considered volunteering for this. You know, I thought there'd be like this rush of people wanting to be on it. I could like not do it, but yeah, I'll volunteer for it. I'm hoping it doesn't turn into a giant time commitment, but I've been led to believe it won't. I'll remember that.
Well, we'll certainly remember this when we talk about committee assignments and liaisonships and things like that. What, in about a month, I think, is when we'll usually really, next meeting. So,
Do we have a sense of when the kickoff on this for the new members?
Do you mean when we would?
When we'll get our doctrine or our orientation? I got myself.
If we could arrange it this month, at least maybe, or in the first part of January, that's what I'm hoping to really start the orientation process and have a meeting with staff from our CPA and maybe one of the consultants. That's what I was hoping to do.
I'd like to move that we appoint Councilwoman Eva Glass and Councilman John Eater to this climate subcommittee.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations on that prestigious appointment. So our next item is concerning the skate garden expansion project, and this is a great item. This is something that's been in the works for a very long time. We unfortunately lost our funding for it, and then fortunately some funding was found, so it's moving forward. So a staff report, please.
Yes, as the mayor indicated, this project has had a longer history than we had hoped. The existing skate park was completed in 2008, and within a few years after that, there was the opportunity for the city to purchase half an acre right next door, and to expand the park, and so work began on designing that addition, and was progressing right along. And then a major part of the funding was from the City Redevelopment Agency. And then the state of California decided to pull the plug on redevelopment agencies statewide, and that was a critical piece of the project funding. So the city suspended work on the project for a number of years. Then we have the Great Recession and financial challenges for the city. Things have improved, and as the mayor referenced, we've also been fortunate to secure a couple of grants. One is a rewards program for communities that produce affordable housing. So the state has a program where periodically, not every year, but where you actually get dollars for park development as a reward for having built affordable housing. So Sebastopol submitted an application to that program, and will be getting a nice amount of money that has been targeted for this project. And in addition, the city filed an application with the Open Space District for funding of the project, the expansion project, and fairly recently was successful in getting that grant. We also have a little bit of money left over from the original skate park construction, and then some other funding in the Park in Lieu Fee Fund. So we've been going through a process with the Planning Commission being the forum for development of an update to the previous design that was just ready to go out to bid when we had to stop the project. So we had a lot of work that had been accomplished, but the objective of the redesign, among other things, was to see if costs could be reduced, and then to revisit the whole plan and check in to see if it's still along the lines of what seems appropriate. So the commission's spent a lot of time, got a lot of public input from skaters, from site neighbors, from community garden representatives, from people who were involved in the original design process for the original skate park. Lots of input, and with the help of Cuesta Engineering, the original designer of the expansion project, and retained again to update the design, the commission developed a concept that the consultants will present to you tonight. I'll just hit a few of the highlights of kind of some of the changes that occurred in that redesign process. One was there was a fairly expensive shade structure that would replicate the one that's in the existing park, but quite expensive. So that would have gone in the expansion area. That was eliminated. We had 2 drinking fountains in the project. Now we just have one and a replacement of an existing one. Generally, the design was simplified, so the footage, the width of pathways was reduced, the amount of concrete was reduced, grading, the consultants looked at ways that the amount of grading could be reduced. A tree that was going to be removed will not be removed. So a number of changes like that were made to simplify the project and reduce its costs. We also got input on some existing issues, like the need for a retaining wall on one side of the existing skate structure. Skater referenced how material, kind of the steep slope there, brings some debris into the skating area. So that's proposed to be part of the project. So the consultants will kind of hit the highlights of some of the features of the current plan recommended by the Planning Commission. We also have an option about play equipment. That's one of the more expensive elements of the prior plan, costing about $95,000 or so. So we have the option in structuring the bid package of making well, looking at that cost as we go further down the design road, get more and more specific, but also making that what's called an add alternate, an optional element, and then there's a much lower cost option if the cost ultimately of the play equipment is beyond the city's budget resources. We do have some questions for you that, as part of the presentation, the consultants will show you some choices about picnic tables, benches, drinking fountains, play equipment, lighting, where we would like some input and some direction. But I would like to say that this is part of the process. The next step, if we get direction from you tonight, will be for the consultants to develop detailed plans and specifications and a bid package. We'll bring that back to the Planning Commission first and then also to the City Council, so that the Commission was particularly interested in any play equipment that might be part of the project and the specifics of that. We haven't updated that piece yet, but we'll be doing that in the next phase of the project and bringing that back to the Commission first, then Council. So you will have another opportunity to review the scope and content of this project and look at some of the options. And we expect that most likely there will be some options structured into that bid package. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Peters and Margaret Henderson from Quest Engineering to make a brief presentation on the design.
So I'm just going to briefly touch on what we've done in the past few months and as this project comes back to life. Kenyon touched on the history, the background of the project, the purchase of it, and the subsequent, we did a design for it in 2011, and that, due to the political climate and various circumstances, that was tabled. So we are looking at it again, and we've met with the Planning Commission a couple of times and received a lot of input, and looking closely at the budget, taking a sharp pencil to what needs to be done to kind of reduce the cost and to move the project forward. We'd like to get it built. So just a few pictures, the existing park, you're all familiar with, I'm sure. The expansion area is between Flynn and the skate garden area, and it actually has an old gravel pad. There's also some willow trees that originally we were going to develop a large swale area and remove the trees in the old plan, but for cost purposes and excavation and reducing the amount of disturbance to the site, we're now going to keep those. Flynn Street has an existing line of maiden trees that are going to remain, and there's an existing fence there that the proposal is to take the fence that's at the interior of the site and put it at the street to replace that. So the 2011 plan had a lot more concrete. It had a big bioswale, it had a large shade structure, an orchard area, garden areas, a natural rain garden, and play equipment, and some other features. In the 2014 plan, we've simplified it with less pavement, still keeping the lawn with the basic theme of this area is to provide kind of a green oasis and a kind of respite from the concrete of the skate garden area. So it's a cooler spot with more plant material and less pavement. So, city council input, we met with the planning commission a couple of times, and some of the issues that would kind of need more resolution on or direction and input include the choices of picnic tables, benches, the idea of the drinking fountain, what to do, play equipment, and then the lighting. So regarding the picnic tables, the original proposal was to use the concrete picnic tables that are at Tomodachi Park, which are very heavy and not movable, and they're, by the same token, they're also suitable for, they take a lot of wear and tear and are suitable if there's any flooding. Some members of the community wanted portable picnic tables that could be moved and placed in different spots within the park, depending on what the needs were, whether to follow the shade or to offer the ability to move it around. So, and then the third option is to use a wood picnic table, which is manufactured by Sonoma County Jail Industries. It's a probation department that manufactures park and recreation equipment. So it's kind of a learn work program, and they make a lot of, it's traditional park and recreation furnishings. For benches, there was some request to put in circular benches that would be placed in the garden area. And so there is a concrete bench that's made that's a circular bench to provide that kind of a design theme. The option on the far right is the backless bench that matches what's out there now, which is in the bottom picture, and then on the bottom left side is a wood bench that's made by the Jail Industries. Regarding the drinking fountain, the one on the right is similar to what's out there now, and there's been some problems with its functionality and durability. It's often not working. There was a request for a drinking fountain that was a bottle filler, which is in the lower right corner, so you can, it has more of a nozzle that you can stick your water bottle in and fill it that way, as opposed to the drinking feature, and then having a pet station as well, which is in that, and believe it or not, it's difficult to find a drinking fountain that has all those features. So that's the issue there. The play equipment, as Kenyon mentioned, is it's a matter of both philosophy and cost. Traditional play equipment is very expensive, and it's designed typically for age groups, a 2 to 5 age group and a 5 to 12 age group, with specific features. And so the original plan, which is in the top, was kind of had facilities for both age groups and quite a bit of independent play features, as well as a water mister, because it's very hot out there, and this is a respite from the concrete area. So that's why it was very expensive. Then we got a design for a more of a modest approach, which is in the lower right corner, which is swings and a few independent play pieces, and then one play structure, one play apparatus. And the third option is to just have a natural play area, which might be a large area of bark and some logs and boulders or something like that. One of the features of the play equipment area would be to move the existing rock play structure that's in the garden area to the new play area, so that that area can be returned to the garden function. Regarding lighting, there was a lot of conversation about the first
the skaters requested to put in lighting that would enable skating, but that was, the view of the planning commission was to table that idea. And so the intent now is to just have security lighting at key locations just to enable visibility into the site at night for security purposes. So the options are to whether to go with a solar light fixture, of which there's a few different types that could be used, and those are kind of on the left side of the screen. Well, I guess those all are, except for the one on the top left is just a traditional wired LED security light. And these would all be about 15 feet tall. And I think there's 3 or 4 that would be put throughout the site, just to illuminate the boundaries. So that was the extent of the issues that were kind of loose ends for the project. Any questions?
Are there any questions of staff or the consultants? Council member Jacob.
How different. Why did I didn't see minutes from the planning commission meeting. I'm wondering if there was any reason for the planning commission to postpone the discussion around adding lighting to the skate park portion of the project.
Well, they thought that in the end that it was, should not be included in this project, this plan. There were a number of comments from the site neighbors about the impact of sports lighting on their quality of life. The sports type lighting has to be very intense, very powerful, and on very tall poles. And so it would have an effect on the nearby residences, and that was of concern to the commission. It was also, I think, part of the commission's thinking was also a cost factor. Having that type of lighting would definitely increase the cost of the project. But I think the primary reason was the impacts on residential neighbors. And that the skate park is open from during daylight hours, sometimes a little bit beyond that, depending on when it gets locked up. So that there is a lot of use there. Those were the reasons why the commission did not, is not recommending including the sports lighting.
I noticed the play equipment went from like really cool to boring, and then I had concern that it seemed like the more expensive apparatus, I take it as plastic.
It's powder coated steel, and the ones that are the climbing apparatus, it's ropes. So it's not really plastic. Maybe has that appearance.
What I'm concerned about is we have quite a Waldorf community here in Sebastopol, so Waldorf compatibility with the equipment. Typically, bright plastic objects aren't very compatible with Waldorf from families and school children. So specifically is asking about that need and how we're addressing that. Those are my 2 questions for now. I think we talked about it more in discussion as we get more detailed selecting items, but Just so it can.
There was one design change that I couldn't quite follow, and it was about the existing fence. And I think you said it was interior on this lot, and you're gonna bring it out to the street? So that leaves me,
Do I answer now, or you, okay.
uh,
There's an existing fence at the edge of the skate garden now, that's a 6-foot chain link fence that's required for insurance purposes to enclose the skate area. And there's an older, you saw redwood slat fence along Flynn. So that interior fence that's at the edge of the skate park now would be moved to the outer edge of where the where the redwood slatted fence is now, because it's a newer material. And there's some disrepair.
okay, so I'm hearing you say we need a fence for the skate park portion at a minimum, but this concept is to fence the entire new expanded area.
That's correct, and that was discussed extensively at the planning commission as well, because the skate park area needs to be fenced, however, the entire park doesn't need to be fenced. But there was some community sentiment and quite a bit of discussion about keeping Flynn separate from the park.
Yeah, the nearby residential neighbors want a fence or some other, a wall or a fence along Flynn. And the discussion at the commission was, well, you know, ideally parks are open, most city parks are wide open, but our insurance requires for skate parks that they be able to be secured with at least a 6-foot fence. So that's why the existing skate park has that. One commissioner thought, well, let's not fence the new area and keep the old fence up between that area and the skate park, but the majority of the commission felt like it should be one park, one integrated area. Don't separate these two pieces of the park with a fence, that would be more desirable. Plus the Flynn neighbors want a fence on their side. So I think, the commission understood that, yeah, our other city parks don't have tall fences around them, and this is an unfortunate requirement of our insurance provider. Skate parks have to have this, but having, once you get inside the park, it be open and both parts be one park was the idea.
More questions? Okay. Councilmember Glennis.
I had a few questions. One is on the lighting. Is some of that lighting intended, or were there choices in lighting that were intended for security purposes? I mean, that are like motion activated or something like that, or is?
All, in July of, I think it's this year, all lights like that are required to have a motion detector. So that would be on all the lights.
And would we be able to use lower intensity bulbs in those so that the neighbors are not disturbed?
Well, they're all down, whatever it's called, down looking,
Down looking?
yeah.
Are they?
LED bulbs, energy efficient.
Are they fairly low intensity, or are they?
Yes, it's not like a bright sports light intensity. It's just to illuminate an area around the entry gates, and there would be one at the end of Flynn looking in, just for security purposes.
And then I was wondering about the equipment, that's manufactured in our local jails.
Is that lower cost? It's a reasonable cost. It's more cost effective than commercial comparable material, but if you're gonna go into the concrete, it's a completely different product. So those are actually, the concrete tables are actually quite inexpensive compared to a commercial plastic lumber or redwood product. But the jail industries that are redwood would be cheaper than that.
Okay, and do we know if the people that work on those are actually compensated for working on them? Is it like a work training project?
Well, it's at the probation camp. I don't know that.
Okay.
It's a training program.
And then finally, do we have, of these choices of furnishings for the park, are there any that are manufactured locally other than the jail?
Well, the play equipment distributor and the play equipment design generally is done by the play equipment provider because there's so many safety restrictions and you have to have a certified inspector, and so they do the whole package. So when we did the design, we just made sure we had enough area for the play equipment features, and that company is actually in Santa Rosa. So they do, they're pretty big, and they do the whole region.
That's it for now.
Thank you. Well, I guess my first question is, I don't remember, is the skate park currently off limits after dark? Is it?
Yeah, it's supposed to be locked, and we have a volunteer program for volunteers locked at sunset or thereabouts, so that the park can stay open longer than when Public Works stops work at 5 or 5:30. So yes, it is locked about sunset.
Do you know if there's ever been an opinion put forth by, I would imagine, the police department? I was hoping to be able to ask the chief as to the wisdom, I guess, of allowing nighttime skating if it were adequately lit.
I haven't heard an opinion from them on that.
Okay. But it seems like, we're running into the infill situation like we ran into with the multi-use trails last week. I have a lot of respect for the concerns of the nearby neighbors. I live near Ice Park, and I have the softball field lights in my bedroom window many nights, and I hear the crack of the bat and the roar of the crowd and the air horns, and I hear every music festival, and the Sea Serpents blast music till 2 in the morning, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And parking is a nightmare, and that's what comes with living in a city and living in a community. And we sat here and had a line of skaters line up and tell us they really wanted lighting. And I forget the gentleman's name who's kind of like the liaison to the skate park. But I told him personally, I said, I'll do what I can do to get you lighting, because some of those kids said, we live to come from school, or I get off my job and the first thing I do is head to the skate park with my wife. And I say I really respect the privacy needs. I just pulled some really quick dimensions off of here, and this is a triangle. It looks like it's about 150 feet from the existing skate area to the perimeter on the thick end, on the wide end, and about 40 feet on the other end of the wedge. And if lights were put into the center of the existing park, are there not lights available to prevent light leakage over a distance of 150 feet?
Are you talking about sports type
Well,
lighting or the other? The security lights are the 15-foot high poles, and so there's not a lot of, you're not gonna see that.
Right.
It doesn't cast light very far and it's not very tall. The sports park lights are 30-foot tall lights, and they would be directed away from the residents, but, you know, I don't have that information on hand, but we did do that analysis of how many it would take and how they would be placed.
so to get adequate lighting, you have to double the height of the light standard.
To provide it for use,
And it's
because you
a-
can't have any, like, shadow areas.
Is there, are there like regulations that cover shadowing and things?
Well, yeah, so what they were saying would be that they would, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was maybe 6 poles with double heads, which would be placed, you know, so they all went that way,
Mhm.
but they would provide the uniform light configuration.
Well, I was pretty dead set on trying to figure a way to get lighting for skating at night, and I don't want to step on the neighbor's toes. I would hope that there would be some possible compromise between poles that are 15 feet tall with lights and poles that maybe could be slightly taller than that and provide a nighttime functionality in the summertime. You know, the kids want to be in there till 8 or 9 at night, and I don't know. I think it'd be a huge loss if there's no availability of safely lit skating. If cost is the object, I would suggest perhaps the council look at stubbing the wiring in for a future lighting project, if that's the obstacle, is the cost. I'm curious what kind of durability and damage history we have with the redwood benches at Ives Park. Those are the jail or probation built benches, I believe. They look to be, or similar.
I don't know.
Yeah. Versus the concrete benches at Tomodachi Park. I realize that people may want to move benches around for a large party, but I think if the concrete ones are substantially more vandal proof, that over time the maintenance costs may be a consideration. And last but not least, I think, is how much community labor possibilities exist in this project. I know, wasn't Libby Park built by?
The super playground was
The
a
super
major-
playground, yeah, and I've actually helped put a playground together in Katati, and it was like giant IKEA playground. Just bring your own Allen wrench and stick it together, and I'm wondering how much of this cost can be defrayed by utilizing community work days, which seem to work successfully here and elsewhere. And one other thing, do we have a sense of what was on that site previously? Like, if we dig into that, are we gonna be digging up a transformer repair station?
It was a contractor yard. I don't think we know that there was any structure there, but there was some kind of construction contractor that used it as a storage yard for many years, decades, I think. And I believe when the site was purchased, there was a minimum of phase 1 environmental assessment that didn't identify any issues.
So we feel pretty safe on environmental grounds.
We haven't had any indication of an issue.
Okay, so that's my only comment. I really want to reiterate that the loss of nighttime skating ability and the loss of lighting, I think, I think the skaters that are there kind of are hoping that this council will come through for them. Thank you.
All right, sure.
How many skate parks are there in West County, do we know?
Well, it depends on what you define as West County. But there's one in the Russian River area that was recently developed. And then off of Fulton Road, there's one. And those are and ours are the only ones I'm aware of.
There's, Bohemian Highway.
Yeah, that's one, the Russian River zone.
And so I understand that for liability, lighting wise, for the skate park area, for liability reasons, we have to have no dark areas, so people don't get hurt themselves because we had a dark spot. Is that
Yes.
basically what we're concerned about?
Yeah, if sports lighting were to be provided, it should be done, yeah, right, and it would need to be bright and, yeah, no shadows, no dark areas.
And what time does our current noise ordinance take effect? Do we have an ordinance that there's no sound past a certain time of day?
Well, there are differences. I think one of them kicks in at 8 p.m. So there's nighttime and daytime noise levels, and I believe that, yeah, one of the points at which the standards change is 8, I think.
8?
Yeah.
So there's no 10 p.m.?
There might be a 10.
We're a rural community. And I'll hold off there for now. Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. Do you have an estimate on the square footage of the lawn?
The lot,
Lawn.
oh, the
Grass.
lawn. I think it's about 3,000 square feet, something like that. Not super large.
And the intention is to use a very low water use demand type lawn material.
You answered my next question.
Okay.
And what is the surface underneath the play equipment?
It would be a engineered wood bark.
That allows children to bounce?
Right, yeah, you have to have a, well, with playground areas have to be accessible, so there's, you know, typically it used to be like play bark, just plain bark. Now they make a product that meets the accessibility requirements, and then when you build the actual access to the play equipment, it has to have a concrete ramp underneath, and it has to be about 12 inches deep, so it's not, so it does have that softening. The other options for playground surfaces are like those rubberized surfaces, but that won't really work in a skate park. If you have anybody skating over a rubberized surface, it's going to tear it up. So, you know, again, this is supposed to be more of the retreat area, the more natural, earthy area. So, a wood bark type of product would be what would be recommended there.
Okay. And the play equipment of the two more expensive, the 2011 design and then the 2014 proposal. The 2011 design, which has an estimated cost of $95,000, do you know are you familiar with the play structure that is constructed up behind Brookhaven School? No? Okay, I was curious if this one was like that, because that has an enormous thumbs up from my niece.
The 5 to 12 one from the original plan is very popular. It's kind of a modern as opposed to a traditional, and you know, you can get these in any kind of color combination, or it could be like a galvanized look, so it looks industrial, and it's, you know, climbing apparatus and that type of thing. And then the smaller one is more of a traditional look, and you know, I agree, some of the play equipment that is out there is really, to me, not very challenging or fun, but there are so many regulations regarding accessibility, and then you know, they design it with this clear space because you can jump off of it twice as wide and things like that, so that's why they're so spread out. The other thing is that the rock that's there has that kind of natural, kind of dinosaur look, and so the play equipment manufacturer recommended something that would go with that, since it's gonna be moved into that area. So they do have these, they look, I guess you could say they look like plastic, you know, rock things, as opposed to a real rock.
All right, at this point, we'll hear from the public if anybody has anything to say about this.
I just have a quick question. I was looking at that one drinking fountain that offered the pet possibility. And we've got the playground for the children. Are pets allowed on this park? And if so, would the playground for the children be off limits to the pets? Because if we've got that bar, we've got animals in the park, we tend to get a lot of mess in the play area where the children are playing. So I just had that question. Thank you.
Linda Keller on Eleanor Avenue. I'm not speaking as a member of the Planning Commission, but I can answer any questions. When we discussed LED lighting, you know, there's bright LEDs and then there's more subdued and amber. And so that was the discussion that we had to provide what's the least amount of intensity to provide the safety for observing what was happening in the park at night. And we talked about having it be on all night, not necessarily with a motion sensor so that the police could observe it all the time. But since our police chief isn't here, I don't know what the proper way for that would be. I'm also not seeing any members of the Flynn neighborhood, and I was wondering how the noticing happened for this. We had members of the neighborhood on ours. I don't know if it's because it's a planning commission. It seems if we're going to be changing, possibly having stadium lighting, that the neighbors need to be here to give their opinions as well. And in terms of the stadium lightings, when we put the skate park there in the neighborhood, the neighborhood did eventually agree to have that, but they did not ever know that they were going to have huge stadium lighting. I think it's sort of a bait and switch where you're slowly changing it to where the neighborhood really, they had known that from the beginning, they wouldn't have given their tacit support for it. It is so very close. It would be every night. Kids need to, in the winter, go home and get rest. If you have another place for my 16-year-old to hang, she will, and so will all her buddies. You know, I'm going to get into a little bit more trouble than you want as your parents. I'm going to tell you that. So I would encourage, if you do decide to put in the stadium lighting, that you really need to go down and look at it yourself and see what that impact would be. And it is unfortunate that it is in the neighborhood, but it was the best place that we felt it would be because the police station is close and for a variety of reasons. But I just am always a neighborhood advocate, and put yourself in the shoes of the neighbor who is only 120 feet away. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Seeing nobody, close public comment. Any discussion on this item?
Well, I'm wondering if we could have staff follow up with the questions. First one about the pets inside this entirely fenced park, and then the other one was about notice for tonight's meeting that the neighbors aren't here apparently. Can you help us with that, please?
Yeah, leashed dogs are allowed in the existing park, so that they are allowed. I don't know that we have any specific regulations that would prohibit a leash dog from being in the play area. So that's what I know about that subject. We did do outreach to the neighbors and the people involved in the previous process, and skaters who became aware of the project in the planning commission process. The commission's plan at the end really seemed to have consensus from almost everybody, although some skaters expressed disappointment about the sports lighting not being included. We didn't provide the same notification for tonight's meeting. I would agree that if the council is interested in pursuing the sports lighting that wasn't in the commission's plan and neighbors were not expecting, that it would be a good idea to continue the item and perform that outreach.
Discussion?
So, regarding the fence, I have concerns that by encompassing the fence with the skate garden, then we have skateboards and 5-year-olds mixing, versus by keeping the fence where it is and encompassing the skate area with maybe an opening that's closed in the evening, then the skate garden could be secured like it needs to be every day, and the remainder of the park can stay open and available to the public. Not that we want people hanging out in parks all night, but there's no reason that we would close the whole park down because a skate park has to be closed. In addition, I believe that friendly, open, community, communicating, engaging each other does not include fences between people. So for me, the fence, in my opinion, should be contained to the area that it has to be, not expanded to cut off the public. I think it's important that we not build a whole new park and have a boring play structure. We actually have a play structure that are going to attract children, but also be Waldorf friendly. I think the skate lights is something we definitely have to discuss and look at, and if continuance is what is required, then I would suggest this council continue this item. But my understanding, there's a considerable amount of more public process that we're going to go through, and there's only one skate park in Sebastopol, and there's thousands of homes and hundreds of streets. So for me, the specialty use of that park should be cherished. And I'm not a parent, but I find that giving young people activities and places to be actually prevents problems and gives young people something to do rather than go behind the bleachers of a baseball field. And that they have places where they come together and congregate and engage each other is actually healthy. But I know there's people believe systems in how young people are managed. And the police department probably has a completely different opinion. Or has their own opinion, I shouldn't assume it's different. And you know, water fountain, bottles, dogs, tall and short. Did you actually, I didn't see a piece of equipment that did it all actually. You were saying that you couldn't find a piece of equipment that did it all, correct?
The one has the water bottle filler and then has an accessible drinking fountain as
And we do have a leash law for dogs.
Yes.
And so, a dog owner walking their dog on a leash into a play area on synthetic bark to go potty, I think in Sebastopol is something we can count on being pretty rare. I think that there's a bit of respect in Sebastopol, just a bit, more than other more urban environments, and that we can trust in our citizens who will be walking their dogs on leashes to be respectful of that space. If we were, you know, a more urban environment, I might question that a little bit more. But those are my thoughts, sort of the primary thoughts on that I have on this item.
To my left, any thoughts?
Well, I concur with Councilmember Jacob. I like the tone, the ring of that. Yeah, I think if we're going to do anything about the lighting, there should be some additional public outreach. I don't think people should feel it's foisted upon them. But I think this really kind of, in concert with the multi-use trails, kind of speaks to a bigger issue. Like, what do we do about infill? Like, I'm here, don't change anything. I was here first. And I'm not saying that about the people on Flint Street, I'm saying that citywide. I mean, this is something, as we continue to fill in all the little nooks and crannies in Sebastopol, it's going to be an ongoing thing. And I think we need to think about that as a community in general. I just really, you know, like the way things are said was brought up before. When somebody says stadium lighting, I think of like Pac Bell Park, you know, or, you know, some giant arena. And that's not the skate park. And so I think the first step is that, you know, again, I wish the chief was here to say, does the police department feel that evening skating activities will create a burden of enforcement that the police department feels unequipped to deal with? Will they be there all the time, rather than around town? I think that's an important question to ask. I agree with Councilmember Jacob. I would say that. Yeah, if you don't give kids things to do, they'll find their own things to do, and sometimes they're not the right things to do. And so I think we really need to deliver on our desire to provide recreational opportunities to children in Sebastopol. If the lighting can be worked out where it's not a huge burden on the people on Flint Street, if it can be directed, or maybe it's not top of the line sports grade lighting, but it's enough to get the job done. And it can be made so everybody can live in peace. I think we should look at that. And if it's a matter of cost, I think we might look at other avenues to reduce costs in some areas to provide the allowance for that. And I like the idea of the bottle and drinking fountain set up, because people will be there with dogs. And I know like in Ives Park, it's not very aesthetically pleasing, but they actually have a big white pipe, like a 12-inch diameter pipe around the playground, that's just subtle enough that if you're a dog owner, you know, don't come in here, because on one side is asphalt pathway, and on the other side is bark, and you would have to really, like, some little dogs can't even get over the pipe. And then another part of the playground has low cyclone fencing around it. So perhaps an aesthetically pleasing barrier that just gives a sense of this is an enclosed separate area. Because I hate to say this park is okay for everybody unless you own a dog, you know. So I concur with Councilmember Jacob on that. And really, that's it. You know, I'd like to make this skate park as usable by the youth of Sebastopol as possible. Thank you.
Councilmember Last?
I'd just like to say, I think it would be, if we are always working with a tight budget, that what we might want to think about is designing with the future in mind, so if there's particular features that have been really desired by the public, but we can't afford now, that the design be such that we can do a fairly convenient remodel in the future as more funds become available.
Vice Mayor Green?
I like the sound of that. Just say that. So on these 5 items that we're supposed to give design direction, I'm adding the fence, that would be the 6th item. So I want to talk about the fence. I find it really uncomfortable to move the fence and then separate this immediately accessible Flynn Street Park from the Flynn Street neighborhood. So I kind of favor keeping the fence on the part that needs it for insurance purposes, so then we have a more open and accessible and friendlier green space for people. About lighting, I think we need to explore the possibilities to see if we can do nighttime lighting and do that in a way that accommodates the neighborhood as well. And so I think of what architects do, you know, we have little models, and I don't know, somebody's got to be able to figure out for us how to direct the lighting and where it would go. And I would need to be assured that it wasn't going to be upsetting to Flint Street, and I think they need to know if we're going to be doing that investigation, and we address their concerns when we investigate. I don't know that there's an answer. I mean, stadium lighting sounds really bright. The lights at Ives, the lights at Libby Park at the tennis courts, they really do light up an area much bigger than the play area. So I just don't know yet how we can protect that and, you know, and shade it from filtering somewhere else. Play equipment, I think we do need something that's fun, and I'm hopeful that maybe we get something that is an add-on for us. You know, if Ives has the little toddler playground, and Libby Park has a different age group, and Rego Park has something else, I think we should look and find the piece that's missing if some age group is not provided for. Otherwise, you know, I think we just need the one that's going to be the most useful and the most visually interesting too, and provide the most physical activity. The drinking fountain, I like the one that accommodates the people, the pets, and the water bottles. Benches, I don't like those backless benches personally. I don't find them very restful. So I would like us to go for something, you know, that's provides the opportunity to recline and rest and relax. And this is the sort of green haven space for this area that's otherwise concreted up. Picnic tables, I want to make sure people understand Tomodachi Park has those cement ones because it floods there, and they need to survive water coming up to them, so they might not be the nicest or the best or the prettiest, but that choice, I think, was done wisely so, given the potential weather conditions there in the winter. I'd like us to have something that is wooden. I'm comfortable with the probation camp work product unless there are some social equity issues. Let's see, also, the one complaint that I've heard a couple times about the skate garden is that there isn't enough seating with shade. And I noticed the shade structure was taken off the plan. And I've had like a grandmother who takes her grandchild down there, and the mother as well, and she's said a couple times it's just too hot, too bright. I've heard that from other family members as well. So if we can organize this, maybe to have some add-ons that come in the future, I think that would be an important one to consider. Yeah?
Oh, I forgot to mention that we replaced the big one with a smaller one, which would be over the flagstone area,
Oh,
that's in
good.
the garden area.
I think
So
that's really important to
There is a
people.
shade structure in
Thank
there.
you. Thank
And
you.
the other thing that was not, that was taken out of the plan from the 2011 was we were going to extend the sidewalk out to Laguna Parkway to finish that off, so those street improvements aren't in the plan. And then one correction, you asked about the lawn area, it's 4,500 square feet.
4,500. Yeah, I think I covered all those design points. You're talking about the shade structure. Right, and there is a modified one that's in there.
Right. Thank you. So my thoughts on this are, starting to use the list of design direction. The picnic tables, I'm not a huge fan of natural wood in a public environment because they tend to end up being carved with young lovers' initials, and they start to take on a less than attractive appearance. However, I do like the softness of wood, the tactile feel of it. I think that there's some really nice composite lumber materials out there that are very attractive. They're very much like natural wood, but they're resistant to damage significantly. So I would like to see a little investigation as to the cost of that. If it's ridiculous, well, we need to go another way. Benches, I agree with Vice Mayor Gurney about the backless, and I think in this particular location, if it's at the the southeast corner, if you will, of the low water lawn, that's the area where the benches are across the pathway. In that location, I think that is a location, well, especially in the winter time with the afternoon sun, that will be nice and warm in a winter context. In the summer context, maybe not so much. Exactly.
Picnic tables.
Where are the benches then?
The backless benches were requested for the garden area where the rock was
They're
going to be
over,
removed.
they're
And
east of
they
there.
specifically requested backless benches, I think.
Yeah, for flexibility of having a group facing in, but also looking out if
Okay.
different situations.
Okay, the garden area, I misunderstood where those were, so those are picnic tables. Okay. So, I guess in that location, they're, I don't know.
There was a request for a curved bench for the garden area where the rock was coming out.
Right, and that is an area
To
that
enable
is, somebody might
discussions and things
want
like
to
that.
face one direction or the other.
And then the lightweight picnic table was requested under the new shade structure so they could move it around.
Okay.
And then those are picnic tables, and then there would be some benches in the play area. that would
Yeah,
be
and another thing that was talked about at the commission was the idea that we would include in the specs of a generic number of benches, that we would cite some benches once things started to shape up at the new park area, and not necessarily predetermine the location of every bench, so that we would specify enough benches to provide some flexibility, and as we saw the area being built, place them.
Okay. Drinking fountain, yeah, all three is fine with me. It's dreadfully expensive. I was shocked at the cost of $10,000, but that's what the other unit was that didn't have all three or four uses. So if we're going to spend 10 grand on a drinking fountain, we need to spend 10 grand on one that waters my dog. Play equipment, yeah, I mean, we gotta, the better we can do it, the better, and I think that just doing this as an alternate in the bid process, I think makes good sense, that way we have the option.
What was that?
Do it as an alternate in the bid,
What?
the different levels of play equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And as I understand it, it can be somewhat of a kit of parts, and so you can design up to your budget with some of the good stuff. So, I think to just call that out as an allowance or an alternate, find out what that looks like in the bidding. The standard lighting, the LED, I think, is definitely the way to go. As far as the skate lighting, that leads to the item number 6 that was identified in the list that was added. As far as the location of the fence,
when I was on the planning commission all those years ago, we were actually looking at this particular project. And I remember that even then, the location of the fence was something of a robust discussion. So it's not a new idea to either leave it where it is or move it. And I've gone back and forth, and frankly, I think I've landed that I kind of like leaving it where it is and create the opening that would be a securable gate, allowing the park to be as useful as possible beyond the hours that the skate area needs to be secured. And I know that the Flynn neighborhood had some concerns over that. But I think that that's probably for the community in general. I think to have the park as open as possible for the most number of hours, I think that's where we want to be with it. And the stadium lighting, looping back to that, I think that there's a design opportunity here to accomplish both down the road. And if the landscaping along Flynn Street that is now called out as screening, shrubs, and fence, I know that at Ives Park, that the view in from Jewel has been a continual point of contention for the police department. They want to have line of sight into parks for security reasons. Here we're creating a place, granted it will be fenced, but it's going to be, or potentially be fenced, but we're creating a line of shrubbery that will not be particularly see-through. So perhaps in lieu of that, maybe look at some trees that have a limb habit that is elevated upon maturity so that there's a line of sight through, but then the foliage is tall enough that it then shields the lights from the neighbors. What a design. So I realize that the Flynn Street neighborhood is not represented tonight, and obviously this is a great concern to them. And so I'm not sure that we're actually, I'm hearing a lot of, I don't want to say dissension, but we have a lot of points that we need to maybe work on. So do we feel like we need to continue this, or where are we with this?
May I make a motion?
Please.
It's a fun motion, Mary, with lots of pieces, so I'll go slow so you can get it piece by piece, and we'll likely ask you to repeat it back, so just tell you that in advance. I'd like to motion that the council give direction to further design the skate garden under the following parameters. First, that the fence stay contained to the skate garden portion of the park. That staff and consultant further explore lighting options and bring those options back to the council before moving forward. That we have the play equipment provided to us at different cost levels as design options as we understand funding better. That we select the drinking fountain that provides all uses, pets, children, bottles, adults. That staff and consultant recommend appropriate benches for appropriate sites. And I know that different people said different things, but I'm gonna go with wood picnic tables, and that we use natural materials whenever possible. I think that was all the questions answered. And I know it's a lot of details. I wonder if there's anybody who wants to second that motion.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
One item of discussion, and that's the issue of the fence containing the skate area. like the idea of keeping the park open to the public and making it more available to the public, so it's not only a park occupied by skaters because it's so cordoned off. On the other hand, I really like the idea of, and I think the public and families and kids who hang out with each other would like the idea of going and watching their friends skate. And so the thing about having the fence there is, if you have a whole bunch of people coming to the park because there's some big showdown of some skaters, it's kind of not very conducive to a lot of people watching if there's this big fence in the way. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could do something that's more movable or has a very large opening or something like that. Michael and Alyssa and I were in Eindhoven in the Netherlands, which amazingly enough has a skate park surrounding their city hall. Now this would make city council meetings way more entertaining. What was interesting about the skate park was it was the city hall with their dais and the all the chairs and everything, and people, I could see people in there working and watching these kids skate. And Alyssa was 5 at the time, and we spent probably an hour and a half watching all these kids skate, and it was really this great entertainment thing. It was definitely much better than the soaps, and it gave the kids a feeling of accomplishment because everyone was going, ooh, ah, look at how amazing that skater is. But it also made it so that all their kids were, their friends were down there watching them, the families were down there watching them. So how can we make, what I'm putting out there is how can we make the skate area visually accessible to the rest of the park if we're going to have the fence in there? That is my question. Councilmember Jacob.
Solutions are always better than questions. So, I could think of, there's what we could make, we could request that there were openings in the fence line that faced Flint Street, so there was at least pedestrian access. We could ask for the ability for Public Works to remove sections of the fence in the event that there were larger events and pre-planning with an events permit, that Public Works could actually engage that type of change in the facility. I'm sure that removable fencing, has a slightly larger cost at a minimum, slightly. I think there would be ways to mitigate that, and I would be more than happy to add to the motion for the consultant staff to come back with options around how we can ensure that we maintain connectivity of the skate park to the playground area of the park, while visual connectivity and pedestrian access between the skate garden portion and the rest of the park. If Vice Mayor Gurney was willing to second that motion amended stuff.
So you're proposing an amendment to your motion, and I will second your amendment to your motion. So we're good there. I think too, if we understood better how much space there was in the skate park, we would know there are areas where people can assemble or gather to be spectators. In the, the south side, there's the pathway all along the west side, and then at the north end. So if we work the fence so that there's an access point, I always assumed, never assume, what I want is, a gateway so that people, I don't need for the fence to be permanently enclosed and closing off from this park. So there's going to be the access from Laguna Parkway and also from this green space. And then I guess it has to get locked up at night. And then we do the visual access with the amendment, so I think we're all good.
Yeah, I believe that there's an opportunity here for a clever fence design between the existing, we're basically in line with the existing fence between the expansion area and the existing. So I would certainly be interested in seeing some options on that. So we have a first and a second, and we have discussed it. At this point, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed, motion carries. And we've had a request for a break. Can we be back in 5 minutes?